I had a manager who hated reading emails and would miss important issues or meetings because of it. I even suggested text-to-speech to make it less unpleasant, but he told me off. He spent a lot of time playing golf with clients and was mostly inaccessible. It got to the point where most of the team CC'd me. I was next on the totem pole, so I could grant approvals for stuff like expense reports and help out on projects my manager was supposed to work on. When I was getting married, I requested 3 weeks off for my honeymoon. Everyone knew I was getting married. Manager even congratulated me on the engagement when it happened. I had 5 weeks of vacation accumulated and didn't think it would be a big deal, especially since I was requesting it nearly 8 weeks in advance. Then a vacation request denied email comes in from our time off system. I emailed the manager following up, left voicemails, and after a week he finally replied to an email. Look, we need dedicated people. If you think you can take 3 weeks off for a vacation, you need to reconsider your position here. Keep in mind, my request dated vacation request for honeymoon. I replied with, no consideration needed. My last day will be date in 3 weeks. Let me know about transitioning duties. I forward this to HR, the CCing manager, and HR set up my exit interview, but HR tells my manager to set up a transition for my responsibilities. During my notice period, I even replied to this email twice asking about transition plans since I didn't get any transition plan. I tell my team, they ask the manager what to do with my duties, and the manager says he'll think about it but doesn't do anything nor email anything out. 4 weeks later, I get a call from my old boss. Are you planning on coming in this week? Why would I? Because you work for me? Not as of last week. Stop messing around, get your ass in the office. I told you my last day when you denied my vacation request. How about giving proper notice and transitions? HR asked you to develop a transition and attend my exit interview. It's not my fault you don't read all your emails. I hung up and blocked his number, but screenshot the call log and sent it to the HR contact with an innocent, should I be worried? Old manager thinks I still work for him. Fallout. Things went from bad to worse for my old manager. Apparently I was doing most of his managerial duties, so he actually had to try and get stuff done himself. He also got into some legal issues. Those clients' golf outings, he played golf, but not with clients. That made his termination with cause, so no severance for him. I ended up at a competitor with a nice bump in pay. I wanted to start after my honeymoon, but the new company really wanted my help on a pitch. I joined for several weeks, reworking 1/3 of the pitch, and then went on my honeymoon for 3 weeks. They paid me for the entire time off. That garnered a lot of goodwill from me, both, and my wife. I only left the company because Mrs. and I moved cross country and they didn't have remote positions back then. ETA, thank you for the awards. I don't have all the details, but I know the old manager had to hire lawyers to deal with legal issues related to his dismissal and the expenses. Clarification, this happened in the late 2000s. Mrs. and I are still married. It baffles me that bosses don't realize that if you want time off for a very important event, that you will take it no matter if you have to leave. I think the way to go is I'll be taking 3 weeks off. You can let me know if I have a job or not when I get back. Worked at a place that claimed work-life balance. Yeah, 6 months on the road, 6 months home. They knew for months about my wedding or honeymoon. Last second job came up and I was like, nope, can't go. I was told my personal life was getting in the way of the job. Yeah, I wasn't committed to staying after that. I did stick for a bit as I could travel to wherever in the weekend, long distance relationship, building up hotel points and airline miles. Was close enough at one of my previous jobs to be a CSO or CTO, but never got the official nod. It was always unofficial, but I had the higher firepower to be honest. One of my juniors made a change without anybody knowing how to nuke the Linux server. Apparently, one of my bosses had given him the root passwords for troubleshooting, but never informed me. The CEO calls, threatening, and says he'll fire me. Put my papers in the next 10 minutes since we're under lockdown. I also notified the employment ombudsman regarding workplace malpractice and bring hell for them during the notice period. One of my other juniors quit 3 months later citing sexual harassment. Last I heard about them, they've had a terrible attrition rate and none of their clients are happy with work. Next story. I'm a female that works in IT and has done so for over 15 years at this point. I've done everything from tier 1 support to server management, and at one point was the IT manager for a company for many years. Needless to say, I'm pretty well versed in computers and troubleshooting. I had moved states and just started out at a new company, only been there a few weeks. A ticket came in for someone that basically said my computer isn't working, so I just walked over to their desk to see what was going on. Being new, I'm very sweet, and I guess to some people it means I'm an idiot. The guy, I later learned, was in his 50s and we'll call him Jack. Angrily asked who I was and where was former technician. I explained he was no longer there and I was a new tech. He then asked 2 other people who were both busy and finally just said, I'll just wait till they're done. Now, I understand there are some people who just prefer to work with specific others, and that's fine, but this was not the case. I said, okay, no problem, I'll let them know and they can help when they're available. Being fairly new, I didn't want to make a big issue of it, so I just let them both know he had asked for either of them specifically. Tom, Tech 1, just rolled his eyes and said then, he can't wait. For the next few hours, we were sharing stories of ridiculous tickets we've gotten in our careers and some of the jerks we've had to deal with. About 4 hours later, Bill decides to head over to Jack's desk to see what the issue was. He started talking about his monitor flickering and going black every 5 minutes and how he hasn't been able to get any work done all day because we took so long to respond and now he's going to be late submitting his project that was due today. Bill fiddles with a few things and after about 30 minutes calls us up and specifically asked for me to come over. I get there and he explains what he saw and everything he checked so far but still couldn't get it working. No problem, let me have a look. Within 20 seconds I figured out the issue and within 5 minutes the issue was resolved. Jack just gave me a solemn thanks afterwards, and Bill made a big show of how I was such an awesome addition to their team and he was so glad I got hired there. It felt good. We walked away and secretly I knew Bill knew how to fix it and it was all for show, but still, I have an amazing team. I've not had a problem with anyone else in the company other than the normal most people hate IT regardless. For anyone wondering, it was a driver update. I feel your pain, sister. Fellow women working in the IT. I frequently tell someone what the problem is and they don't believe me. I get one of my male counterparts to join the conversation and they repeat what I said word for word and are immediately believed. When I was young, this used to tick me off, but as an older woman now, it's mostly entertaining. Like, you don't want my SME troubleshooting? Then you can enjoy waiting for one of the men to become available. I have amazing male counterparts that understand what I put up with and have fun screwing with these sexist jerks. Edit, thank you for the award. When I finally had educated myself as an IT tech, I went on countless interviews for different companies. Didn't get a call back from a single one. Even though I know many of the people who got the jobs in the end, I'm from a mid-sized town in Scandinavia, and most of us IT nerds knew one another. And most of us had gone to the same school, and I had beaten them on many different occasions during our education. My grades spoke for themselves. I crushed many of the people who got the jobs instead of me. This was around 2009 to 2010. And I'm more than sure it was because I was a young woman and they didn't care that I was the best pick. They just wanted a man. So I stopped trying. It's sad, but that's the truth. They took away my dream and to be 100% honest, they crushed me. I wish I'd been a little older when all this happened, but I wasn't and it broke me. So you and your teammates are making me real proud the way all of you refuse to accept misogyny. Next story. I work for a shipping company. Boxes come out of a shipping container, get scanned into the system, and put onto a system of conveyor belts. The boxes then come down the belts to a line of workers who remove said boxes from conveyor belts and load them into delivery trucks. I work at the end of one of those belts. This spot is special because not only do I have to load my own delivery trucks, but I also get the boxes that others missed further up the belt. I have to take these off and put them aside in a special cart for someone to put back into the system later. At the beginning of each shift, we also unload from those delivery trucks the boxes that the drivers were unable to deliver. They go on the belt, I take them off the belt and put them in the cart. Because where I am is at the end of this whole process, we have the time to do this before new boxes get fed to us. And so I have the time to take care of these missed boxes before new boxes get to me. So as you can see, my job starts at the same time as everyone else's. Then my shift was pushed back 10 minutes. You see, because I'm at the very end of this whole process, upper management decided they can save some money by having me start a little bit later. After all, it takes maybe 10 minutes for the new boxes to exit the shipping containers before they would ever get to me. Because their logic is sound and because the system logs what my start time is, and because I do not start getting paid for my time until then, I decide to wait 10 minutes later than everyone else before doing any work. I warned my belt supervisor that I'm doing this, not that he can do anything about it or had any decision in changing my start time. So now when the shift begins, several dozen packages begin piling up at the end of the belt. These are often ridiculously heavy packages in crumbling boxes, which the drivers left behind because they didn't want to deal with them. My supervisor has to get someone else who's on the clock to deal with these packages, which annoys them. The guy who moved the special car to deposit these boxes back into the system is annoyed because he's accustomed to it being ready about 10 minutes after the shift begins. I'm annoyed because I have to deal with this pileup of boxes before I can begin dealing with the new ones coming down the belt. My supervisor is annoyed because this distraction at the end of the belts prevents them from doing other parts of the job until it's dealt with. The managers are annoyed because I'm sitting on my butt for 10 minutes before I'm able to fix this mess. This lasted for about 2 weeks before I noticed my start time was now the same as everyone else's. As a continuous process improvement geek, I appreciate the fact that these sort of desire paths that you've established exist. You're literally going above and beyond what management expects to the point where management sees something else they can sacrifice to save costs, blind to the operational efficiencies you've baked into the process. If management was smart, they'd fail their change fast, go back to what worked, undo their change, and start diagnosing where the desired path is, and why it's there to begin with. Sometimes you don't have to let things fail spectacularly before you can fix them. Sometimes management doesn't get to see all of the detail, hard work that's put into the process to make it work. This is the type of failure that I truly appreciate and actually look forward to. It makes for great and awkward conversations with line managers and supervisors. Sounds exactly like working for FedEx. I spent months getting mad at inefficient use of time, calling a team meeting just as a huge wave of packages hits and piles up. I finally realized none of this matters, and my mental health recovered mostly as I began to work at a steady, comfortable pace for the remainder of my tenure. It's funny, if I hadn't been screwed over so many times by asinine management, I probably would have continued busting my ass. Next story. I'm aware it could be much worse, but it's bad enough to make me hate living at my house, so I need options. I live in a duplex that's pretty small. It's a 2x1, nothing crazy, and there's another one attached to it. I've been lucky enough to not have had anyone living next to me for the last 3 years, but the day I've been dreading has finally come. Somebody moved in. 6 somebodies actually, and 2 to 3 dogs. Now I feel like it's just common knowledge to have at least a small amount of respect for your neighbors, especially when the houses are literally attached, but these people apparently never got that memo. Our front doors are literally 2 feet apart. They are insanely loud, they scream and yell all day and night. The husband and wife are always fighting, and then babies start crying because of it, and people are storming out of the house slamming doors. Their front door has something extremely wrong with it, and it makes this god-awful noise that literally shakes the entire house, and they're out front smoking cigarettes all night long. Sometimes it's every 30 minutes going in and out at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on. I swear they don't sleep. It wakes us up every time they open the door, and my boyfriend has to wake up for work every day at 4 a.m., so he has to sleep, and it wakes my 2-year-old daughter up. They also have these dogs. I have no idea how many, but there's at least 2, and they do the most atrocious bark all damn day, long, non-stop, over and over and over again. They just bark. They're always in my front yard and walking on my porch, which isn't terrible, but I keep my windows open to let sunlight in, and it's just me and my daughter here during the day alone, and it just makes me uncomfortable that they're always like in my window. I just feel like that's part of that basic common courtesy of having neighbors. They also have a wide driveway. They only have one truck, but they don't use the driveway. They park 3 feet from their front door in the grass, which, as I mentioned earlier, is basically touching my front door. Half of those things, like whatever I could get over, but it's the combination of everything all together, and I literally cannot handle it. Specifically, the dogs barking and the door slamming. So I got my speaker and found a 60-hour playlist of loud, annoying music and put it against their wall on full volume, and I'm just going to start slamming my doors and cabinets and play with dogs barking on the speaker when I leave the house. Are they religious? I used to have a horrible neighbor. He either terrified the cops or paid them off because no matter how much of this drug dealing and running prostitutes we documented, the cops wouldn't even drive past our building. He worked hard to make our lives a living hell. My mother came to town and I finally had enough of this guy. So mom whipped up some fast robes out of black material for us to wear. I got some black candles and greenery and paper mache maracas to make noise. We wrote down and practiced what little high school Latin we remembered. Then we went outside and had a ceremony dancing around the candles. Neighbor went to management and complained. I told management it was a part of my religion. Management said it was legally protected, so they couldn't even speak to us about it without getting into trouble. So the guy was SOL. He did everything he could to avoid us after that. He may have had the impression I was putting a curse on him, mostly because that is what I told him I was doing, but he couldn't prove I said it or that it wasn't part of my religion. Figure out what they hate and use it against them until they either start behaving or do something truly crazy and get themselves kicked out. Call the town. Parking on the grass should let you get the car towed. When the dogs bark past 10 p.m., call animal control and the police. Document every interaction. You need to tell them to stay off your porch. When they don't, contact the police and have them cited for trespassing. Basically become the biggest pain in the ass for them. Maybe you can get them to move. Check if they're renting or own the property. You can look that up online by address on the county tax assessor's website. If they rent, contact the owner and threaten to take them to court. Try playing Zen music instead. Switch to white noise when you're home and during the night to drown out some of their noise. I think there are some barking deterrents that look like birdhouses you can put around. Introduce yourself to them and welcome them to the neighborhood. It will be harder for them to be disrespectful if they've met you. Call the owner about the door. That is insane.